I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating. I'd always believed in the promise of honesty about everything. That belief shattered last month when I found her phone on the kitchen table, her face turned away, pretending to be asleep. The silence in the room was deafening, but what really made me stop cold was the glow from her screen and the name that flashed on it, Sarah, her coworker. I'd seen the texts before, of course, but I'd brushed them off. Just work stuff, she'd said. I trusted her, or at least I wanted to. But this time the message was different. It was more intimate. The kind of message that isn't meant for work buddies. It was a story about missing her and wanting more, followed by a heart emoji. My stomach clenched like I'd swallowed a stone. I slipped my hand over the phone, trying to read her expression, but she was still pretending to sleep. Her breathing was steady, but her fingers twitched slightly, a sign she was aware of what I was doing. I felt a rush of heat rise in my face. My palms went slick. My mind spun through all the mornings I'd kissed her goodbye, the nights I'd fallen asleep next to her, trusting her to be honest. She finally stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice strained like she was caught off guard but trying to keep her composure. "I saw the messages," I said, voice tight. "The ones from Sarah. Care to explain?" Her eyes darted away, then back to me, and suddenly her face was blank. "It's nothing," she said quickly, voice too calm. "Just work talk. You know how she is, a little too friendly sometimes." I stared at her, feeling like someone had punched me in the gut. "That's bullshit, and you know it." I clenched my fist so tight my knuckles ached. "You lied all this time. You lied about everything. How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "A few weeks, maybe longer. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her voice cracked, and I saw the guilt flicker behind her eyes. That's when the alarm bells started ringing in my head. I knew this wasn't just some innocent flirtation. The smell of her perfume hit me hard, sweet but fake. I could feel my heart pounding, something between anger and betrayal. My hands trembled as I looked at her, realizing that the woman I'd trusted for years had been hiding this from me. It wasn't just the lies, it was the fact that she thought she could get away with it, that I'd never find out. I took a deep breath, my skin crawling. I didn't want a scene, not then. But I knew I had to act. I needed to see how deep this went, what she'd been hiding all along. I reached for her phone and her eyes widened. She lunged to grab it, but I was faster. My fingers shook as I unlocked it. The messages with Sarah stared back at me, dozens of texts, pictures, plans to meet up. I ran my eyes over a recent one. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. I miss you." I clenched my jaw so tight I thought I'd crack my teeth. Right there in that moment, I saw everything I'd been too blind to see. The lies, the deception. The part of me that still wanted to believe in her wanted to deny it, but the evidence was there, clear as day. This wasn't just about a mistake or a fleeting affair. It was about the trust I'd given her, the foundation of our marriage being shattered piece by piece. I was furious, but I kept my voice steady. "You lied to me. All those nights I thought you were working late. You were with her." She looked away, her face pale, her hands clenched in her lap. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you." That's when I felt the cold realization hit me. I'd been naive. I'd believed in the idea of us in the future we built. But now I saw her for what she truly was, someone unfaithful, someone who lied right to my face without remorse. I knew I had to plan my next move carefully. This wasn't just about catching her, it was about what came after. I'd been betrayed, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight. I closed her phone, my fingers trembling. The room felt smaller, heavier. The trust I'd had was gone, replaced by a bitter resolve I'd never known I possessed. And so my plan started to form, quiet but deadly. I didn't tell her what I was thinking, not yet. But I knew this was just the beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of her face, her guilty eyes, and that damned phone lit up in my hand kept circling in my head. I kept replaying everything I'd uncovered, trying to piece together how I'd been so blind. How long had she been lying? Was I blind to everything else? The betrayal felt like a fist squeezing my chest. I knew I had to act, but not recklessly. I needed a plan, one that would hit her where it hurt without crossing some line I might regret later. I spent the night thinking about her habits, her routines, her weaknesses. I knew she was a creature of habit. She liked her comforts, her routines, and that made her predictable if I paid close enough attention. The next morning, I got up early. Coffee brewing, I let the cold air hit me as I stared out. The window. I thought about what she said last night, that she didn't want to hurt me, that she didn't know how to tell me. That was bullshit. She knew exactly what she was doing. She just didn't think I'd find out. Well, now I did. And I wasn't going to let that slide. I decided to follow her. Not in a creepy way, but enough to catch her in her lies again. I knew her schedule. She always left for work around 8:15, dressed sharp with a briefcase in hand. I waited until she was out the door, then I slipped into her phone and made a copy of her recent messages. I needed proof, concrete evidence of her affair, in case I decided I wanted to confront her directly later on. The plan was simple. I would gather the proof I needed and then decide what to do next. I wasn't about to let her walk over me, not anymore. I also needed to see if she was still sneaking around with Sarah or if this was just a past thing. Her habits would give her away. A few hours later, I saw her leave. I followed at a safe distance, watching her drive to a nondescript office building downtown. I kept my cool, keeping my distance but staying close enough to confirm she met someone. She entered the building and I waited outside, giving her enough time to meet whoever she was with. When she returned, her face was flushed, her eyes brighter than usual. That was telling. She had been with someone, and I knew it wasn't just work talk. I felt a strange mixture of anger and satisfaction. I had her now. The evidence was solid. She'd been lying straight to my face, and I had everything I needed to expose her. Back home, I searched her work emails, her social media, and her phone again. I needed to know if she'd been planning this or if it was just a moment of weakness. What I found was a series of texts between her and Sarah, not just flirty but downright intimate. They talked about future plans, meeting up, sneaking away for weekends. I felt like I'd been punched again, but this time I was ready. That's when I started drafting what needed to happen. I wasn't just going to confront her and hope for the best. No, I was going to turn the tables. I wanted her to feel just a fraction of what I felt. I wanted her to know I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I decided to set a trap. I would arrange for her to think I was oblivious, maybe even give her enough rope to hang herself. I knew she'd slip up. I just had to be patient. The first step was preparing everything, copying the messages, setting up a hidden camera, and making sure I had a way to record her when she least expected it. That night, I sat quietly, feeling the weight of everything I'd uncovered. My stomach was knotted, hands clenched so tightly I felt the nails digging into my palms. I kept telling myself I was doing this for me, that I deserved better, that I wouldn't be lied to anymore. But deep down, I knew this was about revenge, pure and simple. I needed her to see that I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. I checked the hidden camera again, tested the recording. Everything was ready. Tomorrow I'd confront her with what I had. I was going to give her a chance to deny it this time. She tried to keep me in the dark, but I was done playing that game. As I lay in bed, I felt cold and hollow. The betrayal was like a knife twisting in my gut. I wondered how I'd let things get this far, how I'd missed the signs, ignored the little red flags. Now, I knew she was hiding something serious, and I was going to make sure she paid for it, one way or another. My mind kept circling back to that first moment I saw her phone. That flicker of light, the name Sarah, the texts, that was the moment everything changed. From now on, I'd be the one holding the power, and she'd realize too late that I wasn't the type to take betrayal lightly. The next day, I woke up feeling like I'd swallowed a stone. My stomach was clenched tight, like I had a fist curling inside. I knew I had to do it, confront her, face whatever she was hiding. But I also knew that this wasn't going to be a gentle talk. No, I was about to take control of this mess I'd been unwittingly dragged into. I made coffee, but the smell seemed too sharp, too bitter. I kept glancing at the clock, waiting for her to come out of her room. When she finally appeared, dressed for work and looking like everything was normal, my chest tightened. She looked at me with her usual smile, but I saw the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. "Morning," she said softly, brushing her hair aside. "Morning," I responded, voice steady but cold. "We need to talk." Her face faltered. "What's wrong?" I put her phone on the table, making sure she saw it. "I've seen enough, honey. I know about Sarah, about everything." Her face went white, her eyes darted away. I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered, voice trembling. "It was a mistake." "That's what you call it, a mistake." I kept my tone even. You lied to me for months, left me thinking I was crazy or that I was overreacting, and all the while you were sneaking around, texting her behind my back. She looked like she was about to cry. I never wanted to hurt you. I was weak. I didn't know how to tell you. I shook my head. You thought you could just hide it, keep lying until I found out. Well, I did. I leaned forward, and now I'm done. Her hands trembled. Please don't do anything hasty. I love you. I want us to fix this. I felt my jaw tight. Love, that word tasted like ash in my mouth. You don't get to decide what's fixable anymore, not after this. She began to cry softly, her shoulders trembling. I felt a surge of disgust and anger. I didn't want her tears. I wanted her to understand what she'd thrown away. I reached for my phone, pulling out the evidence I'd gathered, screenshots of the texts, the dates, the conversation. I slid them across the table. See for yourself, I said coldly. This is what I've been looking at. This is what you've been hiding from me. She stared at the screen, her face crumpling. I was weak. I didn't mean for it to get this serious. I swear I'll fix it. Just don't leave me. I felt my hands ball into fists. Leaving, that's the least of what I want. You've broken the trust that held this marriage together. I don't even recognize the person sitting across from me. She looked at me, eyes glossy with tears, voice barely above a whisper. Please, give me a chance to make it right. I clenched my jaw. That's not up to you anymore. I've already made my decision. The words felt like a knife slicing through the air. You've crossed a line I never thought you would. The damage is done. Her shoulders sagged and she looked away, defeated. I saw the flicker of shame and regret, but it was too late for that. I already knew what I had to do. I stood up, took a deep breath, and reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small envelope. Inside it was a set of keys to the house, the marriage certificate, and a letter I'd written. I slid it across the table. Take these, I said quietly. Consider this the end. I want my things packed by tonight, and don't ever try to contact me again. She looked at the envelope, then back at me, her face twisted with pain. You're really doing this? Yes, I replied, voice firm, because I deserve better than this betrayal. And so do I. I turned and walked away before she could stop me, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. My stomach still felt like it was twisting, but I knew I'd taken control. I'd finally said enough. As I left the house, I didn't look back. That was the moment I cut ties, closed that chapter of my life. I knew she'd try to reach out, try to convince me to stay, but I'd made up my mind. This was over, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, even as I was still trying to breathe through the chaos inside. I'd taken the first step, now I just had to follow through. The house was eerily silent after I left, the kind of silence that presses down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. I knew she'd probably try to call or text me later, but I wasn't interested in hearing her apologies or explanations. That chapter was closed. What mattered now was how I was going to move forward, clean up the mess she left behind, and make sure she knew I wasn't some fool to be played. I spent the next few hours packing my things, throwing away the little things that reminded me of her. Photos of us together, the souvenirs from trips, even the stupid little trinkets she'd given me over the years. I didn't want her to have any hold on me anymore. The only thing I kept was her letter, which I read once more before sealing it in an envelope, along with the keys. While I packed, my mind kept circling back to everything I'd uncovered. The texts, the secret meetings, her false promises. It was like a betrayal so deep, I wondered how I hadn't seen it sooner. I'd always thought of her as my partner, my confidant, someone I could trust with everything. Turns out I'd been blind, or maybe just too hopeful. Before leaving, I took a deep breath and looked around the house. Every corner held a memory, a whisper of the life we'd built. Now that life was over. I knew I deserved better, but it still hurt. The ache in my chest was real, raw. When I finally stepped out, the late afternoon sun hit my face, feeling almost cruel in its brightness. I paused for a moment, then pulled out my phone. I had to do one last thing, even if she'd hate it. I dialed her number, knowing she'd probably ignore it, but I needed her to hear my voice. I pressed the call button and listened as it rang. When she answered, her voice was shaky. "Listen," I said calmly, "you think you're going to keep me waiting or begging. That's not going to happen. You betrayed me and I don't want to hear your apologies. I want you to understand I've moved on. You lost me the moment you decided to lie and cheat." There was silence on the other end. I could almost feel her hesitation, her regret, Good, that's what I wanted for her to realize what she threw away. Don't contact me again, I continued. I'm done. Find someone else to lie to, but it won't be me. I'm finally free from your betrayal, and I'll be better without you. I ended the call and put the phone away, feeling an odd sense of relief mixed with emptiness. It was like ripping off a bandage too slowly, but I knew it was necessary. I had to take back control of my life. My next step was clear. I had to rebuild myself piece by piece. I'd start by talking to my friends, those who could give me honest advice. I'd find a new place to live soon. I'd start fresh, free from the ghost of her lies. The drive to my friend's place was quiet. Traffic blurred past, but I was far away inside my head. I replayed what I'd said to her, what I'd done. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming my dignity. I remembered her face, the betrayal in her eyes when I showed her the evidence. That look would haunt me for a while, but it was also a sign I'd finally seen the truth. No more hiding. No more pretending. As I pulled into my friend's driveway, I took a deep breath. It was time to start over. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I'd never let someone hurt me like that again. The trust I once gave away so freely was gone, replaced by caution and a hardened resolve. That night I slept in a new bed in a new place. No more excuses, no more lies, just the cold, clear fact that I was done. Done with the betrayal, done with pretending everything was okay. From now on, I'd be the one in control. And I learned something vital. Sometimes the only way to heal is to cut out what's toxic, even if it hurts like hell. Because in the end, you either let the betrayal define you or you take back your life. I chose the latter. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking through thick fog. Part of me still couldn't believe I'd actually done it, walked away, cut her out, ended everything. But deep down, I knew I'd done the right thing. That betrayal had cut so deep I couldn't see a way back. Trust was shattered, and I wasn't about to glue it back together with promises or apologies. I kept my phone on silent most of the day. No messages from her, no calls, no texts. It was like she disappeared into the ether, which was exactly what I needed. I didn't want her drama, her guilt tripping, or her begging to pull me back in. I needed space, time to breathe, time to figure out what I really wanted. That evening, I finally sat down and took a long, hard look at myself. I felt the weight of everything I'd lost, but also the strange sense of relief. For years, I'd been living in her shadow, trying to avoid conflict, trying to keep everything smooth. But not anymore. I realized how much I'd been sacrificing my peace, my self-respect, my happiness. I remembered a conversation we'd had months ago when she was stressed about work and she'd said, "Sometimes I just want to escape, just disappear for a while." At the time, I'd brushed it off. Now I saw it differently. Maybe she was already looking for an escape and I was just too blind to see it. I decided to meet up with some friends. I needed to talk to get my head clear. When I told them everything, their reactions were a mix of shock and anger. One of them said, "You dodged a bullet, man. Honestly, I was worried. She dragged you through the dirt with her lies." It felt good to hear that, but I also felt the sting of betrayal still lingering. Still, I knew I'd made the right choice. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending everything was fine when it was. I was done apologizing for myself. From now on, I'd focus on rebuilding, on healing. Over the next few days, I started working on myself. I rang up a therapist, someone I could talk to without judgment. I kept busy, hitting the gym, picking up old hobbies I'd abandoned. I even started dating again, though cautiously. I wasn't ready for anything serious, but it felt good to see that the world was still turning, that I could still enjoy moments without that heavy cloud of betrayal hanging over me. The emotional fallout was intense. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, remembering her face, the lies, the betrayal. I'd get angry, then sad, then frustrated. But every day I moved a little further away from that pain. I reminded myself that she'd chosen her path, her lies, her betrayal. I hadn't failed, I just finally saw the truth. One day I decided to check my bank account. Funny how practical things give you clarity too. I saw the last transaction from her, a small, meaningless purchase. That was my cue, time to cut all the ties. I called the bank, closed the joint account, and changed my passwords. I didn't want her sneaking back in, trying to manipulate me again. That evening I sat down and wrote her a letter, not to send, just to get everything out. I told her how much she hurt me, how I felt betrayed and humiliated. I told her I deserved better, that I'd finally taken control of my life. I finished the letter by saying I hoped she'd find happiness, but it wouldn't be with me. It felt cleansing, like I was finally releasing that part of myself I'd been holding onto for too long. I put the letter in an envelope and sealed it. I knew I wouldn't send it. It was for me, a way of saying goodbye. That night I finally slept without that gnawing ache in my chest. I'd fought for myself and I'd won. I'd taken back my life piece by piece. With no apologies, no regrets. The biggest lesson I learned. Sometimes you have to lose what you thought was everything to see what's truly yours. And that's okay. Because once you realize your own worth, no betrayal can keep you down forever. A few weeks passed and I kept moving forward. The initial shock of everything had worn off, replaced by a quiet sense of resolve. I'd thrown out the remnants of our life together, pictures, her gifts, reminders of what I'd lost. I kept telling myself that I deserved a future where honesty and trust weren't just words, but realities I could count on. That belief became my anchor. One day, I returned to my apartment to pick up a few last things. The silence still felt strange, but it was different now. It wasn't oppressive anymore. It was peaceful. I knew I'd made the right choice. I'd finally cut the cord and refused to be dragged into her web of lies. That's when I decided I needed to do one final thing, to reclaim my space and my dignity fully. I went out and bought a set of new keys for my apartment, a fresh start. Then I sat down at my kitchen table, took a deep breath, and wrote a letter, an ending to everything and a promise to myself. I poured my feelings onto paper, the pain, the betrayal, the realization that I'd been better off without her. I told her I forgave her, not for her sake, but so I could finally let go. I handed her the power, and now I was choosing to move on without it. I sealed the letter and slipped the keys into an envelope, then headed to the mailbox. As I dropped it in, I felt the weight lift just a little more. That was the last piece I needed to close this chapter. I was done with her lies, her manipulations. I'd taken back my life and my peace. Walking back to my car, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I looked at the horizon, the sky tinged with the golden light of sunset. It was a new beginning. Not perfect, not easy, but mine. I'd survived the storm, and now I was standing in the aftermath, stronger than ever. Sitting in the driver's seat, I reflected on everything. I'd learned a lot about myself through this chaos. I realized that trust isn't something you blindly give away. It's something fragile that takes time to build and even longer to repair once broken. But most importantly, I learned that I don't have to accept betrayal as part of my story. I have the power to walk away, rebuild, and find happiness on my own terms. Today, I look forward. I know there will be more ups and downs, but I won't let betrayal define me anymore. I'm finally free, and that freedom feels like nothing I've ever known before. I don't hold resentment anymore. Instead, I hold gratitude for the clarity I gained, for finally seeing the truth and having the courage to act on it. So, to anyone reading this who's in a similar place, trust your gut. Don't let betrayal or lies drown your hope. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Endings are hard, but they make space for new beginnings. And you owe it to yourself to create a future rooted in honesty, respect, and your own peace. I turned the ignition, started my car, and drove off into this new chapter. No more secrets, no more lies, just me, finally in control, and honestly, that feels damn good.